Hi, everybody, and welcome to Building a Better Future, Stories from Climate Tech Founders. Over the course of this 8-week series, we are going to be chatting to founders from early stage startups and understanding where their love for sustainability began, what led them to action and set up their own business, and what challenges they've faced in those first few years as a founder. As always, I really hope that these stories are going to be relatable to any other founders out there who are on a similar journey. I hope they might be motivational if there's anyone out there considering taking the leap themselves and setting up their own business. And I hope they'll be informative to anybody that's passionate about climate tech and just wants to hear about the cool things that people are working on. My name's Cherry. I'm the founder of Above and Beyond Recruitment. Our business partners with climate tech startups, and we help them to develop their employer brand and then grow and scale their product and engineering teams. Last week, we kicked off our interview series with a fantastic conversation with Mark Corbett, the CEO and co-founder of a business called Thrust Carbon. He talked us through his early experiences of entrepreneurship that he had at university, how some early failings really taught him a lot about building his resilience. And he also talked about how the entire concept for his business came about at a hackathon that his co-founder invited him to, and he said yes to completely on a whim. So really interesting story. Urge you definitely, if you didn't catch it live, to go back and have a look. It's a link on my profile now, so go and have a look at that. But today we are joined by Louise Parlons Bentata. She is the CEO and co-founder of a business called Bluemethane. Launched about 18 months ago, Bluemethane are developing a pioneering technology to remove methane from water to prevent it from escaping into the atmosphere, and then use this captured methane as a form of renewable energy. Louise has had a really interesting background in the world of retail and e-commerce marketing, and along with her co-founder, she joined the Carbon 13 venture builder to develop their idea. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that experience. Louise, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Lovely to be
here. I'd like to kick off. No worries. I'd like to kick off like we always do, really, by going back to the beginning, if you're happy with that. So can you kind of take me back to those early years of your life, kind of education, even pre-career, and kind of see if you can kind of identify if there were any early inklings of a passion for sustainability and a kind of desire to act on that, or a passion for business and entrepreneurialism and kind of wanting to kind of carve your own path. Can you kind of identify where that came from, do you think?
So I'm the youngest of four. So I think I had my growing up, I was conditioned to be fighting for airspace. But I think, so the youngest of four, I was brought up in London, where I am again now. I'm a rare Londoner from London. And I was educated in London, and then I was at university outside London. But I didn't think about sustainability at all, really, except when I was about 17, 18 at school, when people were talking about the ozone layer and chlorofluorocarbons. I remember having quite a lot of research about that, but I didn't think about it. My mother's a teacher, and my father was an entrepreneur with an unrealistic optimism to him that I have adopted. I didn't think about sustainability more than that when I was growing up.
Fair enough. No, I think a lot of us have got a sort of school-related memory of learning about something like the ozone layer, or in my case, fossil fuels, and going, "Oh my God, what? Yeah, this is a thing." Yeah, frightening. Okay, perfect. And a father as an entrepreneur, so interesting. That's where you kind of saw, I suppose, that it was possible and something that you could do.
Yeah, I definitely made the very impossible things feel like they could become real. But I don't think I internalized it at the time. I never thought of that as a path for me. Throughout my 20s and 30s, I did think about, it'd be great to start a company, but I never thought I had the right idea, or could I do it without the right person? And so it always became something which was delayed or a second priority.
Yeah, fair enough. And so talk me through your kind of early career then in university. You studied geography, did you?
Yeah, so I took a gap year after my A-levels, and I worked in an investment bank for 9 months and then traveled for 5 or 6. And I had planned to do economics at university, but I really didn't like working in an investment bank and decided I would change, and got to university and changed to geography, which I hadn't studied for A-level. And I found a great course, super interesting. And then I came out of university, and then I went on the graduate training scheme at L'Oreal, which was a brilliant marketing experience. Not that I was particularly passionate about the product, but the learning curve was amazing. Great autonomy and responsibility for very young people. And from there, I went to do marketing strategy at Johnson & Johnson, which is more of a global role. And it felt a much larger organization, but fantastic people and a great grounding actually in marketing strategy and marketing.
Yeah, amazing. And what kind of prompted you? You sort of went on and did further study in sustainability. I noticed you went back to kind of Cambridge University to the Institute of Sustainability Leadership. Is that right? What kind of prompted you to make that pivot kind of out of marketing and in across to sustainability?
So after Johnson & Johnson, I set up my own marketing consulting strategy. And I did that for a long time around when my children were growing up. So I've got 3 children who are now between 11 and 15. And so I hadn't meant to do that, but somebody had offered me a project and I therefore fell into marketing consulting that I then continued to do because it was interesting and flexible and I had really great clients. After about 7 years of that, one of those great clients who was a manufacturer of niche plastic, highly engineered kind of widgets, I could see that they were faced with the challenge of not being able to recycle their products. And I became interested in trying to introduce a kind of circular system. So I started researching with the circularity. I'd never heard of it before, or not to any extent. And then I said, look, can I do a project for you on bringing circularity into your system? And the gentleman said to me, well, what training have you done? Have you done this before? What makes you qualified? And I said, well, none. I've got no qualifications in this. I've just got a good brain and some common sense, and it's a new area. So not how hard can it be, but how much expertise does one need to have? Anyway, so I was pushed back to continue the marketing work, and they brought in a lady who she was a sustainability consultant. So I went out for her for breakfast, and I said, well, what makes you a sustainability consultant? And she said, well, I did a sustainability leadership course at Cambridge University, and it was a 9-month postgrad. And then I'm doing work as a consultant. So I thought, all right, well, I'll do that. So it was like deep in COVID, and I signed up for the postgraduate certificate in sustainable business leadership back at Cambridge University. And I did that in the evenings and online over 9 months.
Wow. So you were working self-employed, essentially running your own business as a marketing consultant during COVID, looking after children and studying on a postgrad course.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's the end of January 2021. And coming out of the course, I thought, now I can't go back.
Yeah.
Because now I understand the extent of the challenge and the frameworks that I could use to help solve part of this problem. And a great friend of mine who I met at business school, she sent me a message around that time saying, oh, I know you're interested in this area now, Louise. Have you heard about a climate technology fellowship? It's remote because of COVID, but it's out of Silicon Valley. It's called On Deck. I think you might like it. And it was just a 5-minute application to just begin with. And I happened to get on that course. And whilst the course in Cambridge was a brilliant academic foundation, the Climate Technology Fellowship was real world, very practical. And there are about 180 people, I think, like super senior in climate tech across the world, although quite focused on West Coast. And through that, I met my co-founder, Nesta, and he is an experienced engineer in water utilities and hydropower. And about 1.5 years before our meeting, he had read an article in The Guardian saying that hydropower reservoirs emit 1 billion tons of greenhouse gases. And he was like, what? I've never known this. And I've been working in this industry for 10 years, 15 years. How can I not know this? So on his side of his job, he thought, I'm going to try and work out whether we can develop a solution to process large volumes of water to extract this methane to stop it being emitted. After about 1 year on his journey by himself, he thought, I need a co-founder. So he entered the fellowship program looking for a co-founder, and I went in there looking for dramatic change. And we just happened to meet on one of the first interactions. We'd gone well, but we didn't meet in person. He was in the Netherlands at the time. And anyway, I'll stop there before I let you ask any more questions.
No, that's brilliant. And how did you know? I mean, was it because finding a co-founder, right, and building a partnership and setting out on this journey together, you've got to know they're the right person that you want to go on that journey with, because it can be challenging, right? So how did you know? Did you know upon the first time you spoke to him that he was the person you wanted to do something with, or?
No, the premise of this fellowship was that you offer twice as much help as the help you think you would want to take out of it. And the help I could offer people was on positioning, telling a story, and marketing strategy, which was a thing that he was finding kind of challenging in such a difficult area. So I was helping him along with other people on helping them tell their story of their business. And it was a pleasure working with Nesta. And then after maybe a couple of weeks of a few meetings, we suggested, okay, let's do 3 weeks together of half days and see how that works out. And at the end of it, I think his wife said, "Go on, just ask her, just ask her.
Ask her out."
Ask her. And so it wasn't like I know I'm not really that kind of person, but it was such an easy relationship from the start. And we share nothing, Cherry, with like really nothing. We have a different background. He's a Colombian based in the Netherlands, and we have a different culture and different views. And I am action-packed and reactive and action-orientated, and he is thoughtful and logical and calm. Like, we come to everything from a different perspective, and that makes it brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic. Yin and yang. Love it.
Yeah.
That's really good. So after
we only met for the first time in person 3 months after we had founded the company in the UK. So we set up the company in like June, and we met, maybe it was actually September, in the first week of the Carbon 13 program. We met on the platform of King's Cross Station.
How amazing. Yeah. I love that. And so when the kind of that finished and then started Carbon 13, what was the kind of time gap there, and what did that look like in terms of the application process? How did you hear about Carbon 13? What did that part of the journey look like?
When I was just finishing my Cambridge postgrad, one of the lecturers was called Nikki D, and I saw a little logo on the bottom of her presentation saying Carbon 13. So when they had breakout rooms, I asked her what it was about. So this is like November 2020. And she told me, and I applied by myself as an individual, and I had my interviews, and I didn't get on the first cohort. And actually, I was a bit crushed because I really felt this was my thing. Like, I really felt a climate tech startup was the thing I wanted to do, but I didn't have a co-founder. And then when I met Nesta, I said, look, I haven't got on, but I think you should apply anyway for the company, because I really think neither of us have got funding experience, like the fundraising experience. And I think that's the bit we're missing the most, amongst other things, but that could really help us. So I think you should apply. So actually we said, Lena, we'll apply together. And for Carbon 13, if you apply as a pre-formed team, you both have to either accept it or not accept it. You can't, they might offer one of you, but not the other, kind of.
Yeah.
So we said, if we both get on, we'll both take it.
Love that. And just explain, because I mean, obviously we both know what Carbon 13 is, but there might be people watching who've never ever heard of it. So are you happy to just give a bit of a overview on what Carbon 13 is?
Yeah, so Carbon 13 is a venture builder designed for people who want to start a climate tech company or climate focused company, but might unlike to have their co-founder already. So it mixes people together in a kind of melting pot, gives you ample opportunity to meet everybody on your cohort, with the idea that you will form a team together, develop an idea together. Most likely there'll be a technical person paired with a commercial person, or maybe two technical and one commercial, but ideally some mixture of the two. And then they help you through 3 phases of the program to meet a co-founder is phase 1. Try and develop the idea at phase 2. And at the end of phase 2, you pitch for some beginning of pre-seed money. And that helps you through phase 3. And the whole journey is about 8-9 months. So by the time you leave Carbon 13, if you are successful to get through all 3 phases, then you have set up a company and received your first funding for it.
Fabulous. And so did you both get accepted, I assume? Spoiler
alert. So we both got accepted. Both got accepted, and we started last September.
Fantastic. And what did that look like then from the day you first went in? Talk me through that kind of experience and how it kind of formulated and shaped your idea. Did it change your idea much from what you went in thinking you were setting out to achieve?
No, for the business we were setting out, it didn't. But it really gave us, I think, we met lots of super interesting people, which is never a waste of time. But I think the most valuable thing is it funneled us through a timeline for our first fundraising and educated particularly me on the process of the fundraising. So I have never fundraised before. I've never been exposed to VCs or grants or any of that process before. And I felt they really kind of held my hand through that. You know, I didn't know how to do a cap table. They gave us language and education on cap tables, but every part of that fundraising, so that you had to be ready for a particular, all these milestones had to be done by a particular deadline. And I am certain if we didn't have that rigor, we wouldn't have got there in time, or even 6 months later.
Yeah. No, that's really, really useful. And how long were you in each one of those phases?
I think the first phase is about 6 weeks. And if you don't find a co-founder in that time, it's like blind dating. If you don't find one, you don't move on to phase 2.
Oh gosh.
So Nesta and I were always going to go through because we already had each other. But there are a lot of people who are really awesome applicants who just hadn't found a person.
Yeah.
So we had to leave the program.
Oh, it sounds like X Factor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Knocks out. Yeah. And so in that first 6 weeks, obviously you already had your co-founder. So what did 6 weeks look like for you guys? Because you weren't looking for somebody already. So did you kind of almost have a bit of a head start and some time to start developing the idea out further?
I think it's a false head start if you think it's a race. So
sure,
it's we used it like it wasn't that we didn't go into Carbon 13 with with particular expectations or with a clear strategy. Like we were quite okay. Let's give this a go. I was quite excited about doing it 6 months, 9 months earlier. So we thought, okay, let's meet interesting people. Let's see whether there might be somebody. Like for us, it'd be like we need somebody who's a finance person if we're going to find someone. We decided that our co-founder relationship was really awesome and that we weren't quite ready to risk it with another person yet. And if we undoubtedly will require particular competencies later on, that we would bring them in. Yeah. That I wasn't ready. I think Nesta was a bit more open-minded, but I felt quite strongly that I wasn't ready to change that dynamic.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the co-founder dynamic is.
Yeah, and we're already working like remotely. So we've set up as a remote company, and that's what you don't want to take on more challenge, I think, than is too much for a fragile company.
Yeah, no, that's totally right. Very wise. Yeah. And then that next phase that you go into, so once you've found, you've got your team together, you've decided it's just yourself and Nesta, that's middle phase then where you're kind of working that idea out and building it. Talk me through that. What did you learn through that phase? Obviously the funding stuff, but what else did you learn and how did the idea kind of come together at that point?
That was a time when we were beginning to apply some more rigor. So market sizing was a new exercise to me, not just a great idea. So market sizing, validating whether customers might want this. Is it really a proposition that is going to work? And through that phase 2, actually, that's the dog coming in. Through that phase 2, you're also writing your business case. So it's not like you get through the end and then you build. The second phase is formulating the idea, building a business case, setting up your company, doing a cap table as if you're going to get through optimistically. So actually, there's quite a lot of process that I focused on because I'm doing everything not technical that I learned. So, and they had multiple kind of workshops in person and remotely to help.
That's amazing, because actually a lot of people that found a business do so with great experience, either really great experience in product and marketing, technology, engineering, whatever it may be. But if they haven't been through that journey before, lack, I suppose, so a lot of that rigor that you learnt. And a lot of that stuff, I suppose, can be the make or break, right? If you've got to, fail to plan to fail, fail to prepare to fail. I suppose that could really be, the make or break in a startup, and what increases the odds of you being successful ultimately.
Yeah, I think at every stage you just want to try and take out as much risk. And I think for us at the fundraising part, the beginning of our fundraising, because it really was the beginning, it was really helpful. journey, but also I felt like the 4 people who founded Carbon 13, they were super available to us. So when I had 25 questions on not understanding the cap table, then there was always somebody to help me.
Yeah, amazing. That's really good. And then that pitching process, what did that look like? That third piece where you have to go and pitch?
So you pitch. It was January, and we had to pitch at the Cambridge Union.
Right.
And it was actually we did it. I said remotely in January, and then we had to do it again later in the summer. But it was terrifying for me to begin with. You know, I think I practiced like 50 times, but a great way to try and refine the story. So we had a lot of coaching on the story part of it, the narrative, how to make it feel like you were pulling people in and taking them with you. And for that, I'm super grateful. I think I would have made it very functional, but they made it feel very emotional.
Interesting. And did you, with the live pitches, was it just sort of like a Dragon's Den? There was a panel, you had to stand up and speak to them all? Or is it?
Yeah, it was. It was like we were in the Cambridge Union, and we were pitching the ideas to whoever the 100x people were in the room. And actually, there was no auto cue. And then we did it again the next day in the Barbican to some VCs. Yeah, they put us in quite uncomfortable situations, which have only pushed us forward.
That's amazing. So I was picturing like maybe 5 or 6 of them at a table, 100 people.
Yeah, so there's the internal one first in Cambridge Union. So it's other Carbon 13 people, and kind of it's a gentler audience. And then the next day was to VCs in London at the Barbican.
Wow. And what kind of challenges did you face? Were they in the moment? Were they kind of pushing back and asking questions? And like you'd see on Dragon's Den, or do you just do your pitch, you hear nothing, no feedback, and then you go sit down?
We find so often with our business that we get asked fewer questions because people are more like this. What are you doing? Like when people are saying it's a solar business or it's a carbon accounting software, people understand it. It's familiar. They might have already invested in that space. But we mostly leave people stunned. And that is a part of education. So I feel not worried about it at all. But second of all, it makes it challenging because people don't like to invest in areas that they don't feel comfortable having done it before. So I often get the face. We didn't get that many questions. Often we have to plant questions because people don't know what to ask.
So I suppose the biggest kind of blocker would be people's lack of education about it and it feeling like a big, scary unknown rather than anything else.
Yes, because when people think about methane emissions, they're thinking about cows or they think about oil and gas, and there's very little awareness of methane emissions from water. I mean, on Sunday night, there was a fantastic Frozen Planet, Dave Attenborough, and he talked about the melting permafrost creating millions of extra reservoirs in Alaska, and that is including masses of methane that was frozen that's being emitted. And I was like jumping up for joy that this was really, like there's no better education.
Yeah. Well, it's been on Attenborough, then it's in the mainstream. Yeah. Then everybody sits up and listens. Perfect. So talk about where Bluemethane is today. Secured the funding and kind of came out of the program. What did those kind of first few months look like then in terms of going, right, okay, we're now a business properly, we've got the money, we're launching. What did that bit look like?
So the fundraising was a longer process than that, because although Carbon 13 were our first investor, you then need to complete your fundraising round depending on what your business needs. Okay. So we actually then that was like the first investor of our pre-seed. So come March or so, we then, okay, now this is how much we really need to raise to last us a year. And then we went out to VCs and strategic angels and some foundations. And that was a journey. Like there was it was a very long tail to begin with. I thought nobody's gonna give us anything. We're gonna do. And then we were featured in an email called Climate Raise, which is female founders. And I don't know how they found out about us, but we were featured in April. And that was it. Like I have the floodgates opened, and we were so inundated with people who were the biggest of the biggest VCs and investors who we're desperate to try and get in front of. And they were like saying, oh, we've heard about this. This sounds amazing. Can we speak to you? So suddenly, from it being my first raise and still my first raise that I'd never done, and thought, maybe how hard is this going to be? How does it work? And then suddenly we were way oversubscribed, but and we said, okay, we're going to continue. We're going to stick to what we said we were going to do, and just take this amount of money from these people who we thought were awesome.
Amazing what that little bit of PR can do. Yeah. And I suppose if you were to do that process again, would you kind of be more mindful of the noise around the business and the PR and being featured in some of those things to drive that interest?
There's some things you just don't know until you know. So I now recommend people on my cohort who I think are really awesome founders to get in touch with. The people who I have found have given us lots of airplay. Having lots of people contact me gave me confidence in those conversations again. So I think it was a mixture. So when I realized actually we were a really attractive company for this kind of area, and that we did deserve to be here, and that we could have massive impact and be sustainably financially, I stood taller too. And I think that it was not chicken and egg, but they were both things compounded together, which made us a more attractive thing to invest in at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, interesting. Okay. And so when you kind of completed that final funding round then, and you had the money to last that first year out and get going, what did that look like then in earnest? You know, we've got the money, let's do this now.
So we first built a small prototype like this size, and it was it involved about half of the concept we were going to include, and we built this and we tested that at a water treatment plant who were interested in our idea, and that was in April, May. And that went well. That we removed the amount of methane that we thought we would, or pretty close to it. So now we started building the next size up, which is about the size of your kitchen table, and that's still a tiny prototype, but now it's to scale for all the features of our design. And then we're testing that in the Netherlands, and that's just to keep it in-house still. So my co-founder's now in Belgium, and we're testing that in the next couple of weeks. And then we have 3 proof of concepts that we have confirmed. One's in Rwanda at Lake Kivu, which has a whole array of methane concentrations. One is likely to be in the UK, and one will be in Poland. So we have a technology part. We have a completely remote team. So we are demonstrably remote, and we work hard to build remote teams. So we're now 9 people. So we're not just Nesta and me now. We're not all full-time, but we are 9. And I'm so proud of them because they are like rock stars, PhDs in greenhouse gas emissions from lakes and reservoirs. It's amazing, actually.
Amazing. And how did you find those 9? At what point did you and Nesta realize we need to bring some more people on, and how did you decide who those people would be and where you'd go to find them?
Often people contact us because they've heard about what we're doing, because we're getting quite a lot of traction now in and airspace, and really people who are really interested in the space, who might be researchers, they might approach us and say, look, I'm an expert in this, and I've been thinking about this problem even though hardly anybody else. Is there any way I can help? Also, we have, before Nesta, I met Nesta, he has his own engineering consulting work, and the couple people who work for him there, he moved them across, knowing how great they are, and they're based in Colombia. So our team were in Colombia and Poland, and a couple of us in the UK, and Nesta's in the Netherlands. Like, we're everywhere.
Amazing. And have you managed to all get together at any point yet? I imagine that's logistically tricky to achieve.
And not yet all together, but we're learning more and more how to make people feel like they're part of a real team, even though we're sitting in different offices. So we do a water cooler kind of idea once a week. We have an all hands once a week where we go through all the projects. We try really hard through people telling us as well, like what they're feeling, like really listening to how they're feeling about working by themselves and how we can help them not feel alone. So what training they need, maybe they need a new keyboard, but we can't see. Like we are really trying hard to build remotely.
Yeah, and that's not easy to do, because
Right.
we're all, I suppose, learning how to do that, right? And have been over the last year or two, how to kind of find our way in building culture and making people feel supported and looked after, despite not being in front of them. So yeah, no, that's really interesting. Okay, and so you're a team of 9 now. You've kind of got this second prototype, this larger scale together that you're going to test. And what do the plans look like moving forward? So fingers crossed those tests all go well. What does this next phase of growth over the next sort of 12 months look like for you?
So there's technology innovation, which we discussed, and then there's customer development. So we're not ready to sell a finished product, but we are absolutely, it is absolutely imperative that we design the product with the customer's input all the time. So making sure that we're validating the thing is that we're making is the thing they still want to buy. So customer development is critical. But thirdly, what we understand is that whilst almost 50% of all greenhouse gases are coming, or global warming is coming from methane, less than 2% of investment is in methane abatement technology. So it's wildly underfunded. And what we recognized is that we also need financial innovation here to incentivize people to invest in this space. We teamed up last December with an awesome company called Open Hydro, and together we applied for a grant to develop a kind of financial mechanism to incentivize private investment in methane capture technology. So it's like methane capture as a service, a bit like your Spotify. You can listen to the music, but not pay to own the thing anymore. And that's what we're developing for our technology with them. And that was actually endorsed in Climate Week in New York a couple of weeks ago. It's amazing.
So what does that look like on a practical level? Is it a bit like...
So as a company, it's like we set up a new business, and that business is, let's say, called Methane Capture Service, and we sell that to the hydropower owner. The hydropower owner will say, look, I have a problem with my methane emissions, but I don't want to pay that much money for the technology, and I don't want to be responsible for it. So it's a hybrid project. So, okay, that's fine. We will organize the investment. We get third-party investments, and we will take away the problem of your methane emissions by deploying our technology. And out of it, the revenue stream was from carbon credits and the revenue from the additional energy generated from the captured methane, and that will go back to the investors. So we take away your problem, hydropower owner or asset owner, and to the investors, they get the returns. So it's
amazing.
Yeah,
so clever.
It's been brilliant. So we've been working with the Lab for Climate Finance and the Climate Policy Initiative to develop that.
Amazing. And who are your kind of potential clients? Where does this problem sit? Is it just hydropower or?
So I probably should have started at the beginning. So the problem of methane from water, of the 51 billion tons of CO2 a year, about 6 billion equivalent is from methane. So it's 3 billion. So that's 6% of the problem is from methane. And they're coming mostly from 3 areas: reservoirs, rice cultivation, and wastewater.
Okay.
So knowing that and it's not everywhere. So wastewater is geographically distributed across the world. So that's everywhere, UK, anywhere. But the reservoirs, particularly all reservoirs, but we're looking at hydropower reservoirs first because they're already connected to a grid, so we can access their electricity generation facilities. They're mostly across the tropics, where it's lovely and warm, lots of vegetation, lots of water. So and the methane in all those 3 places is formed from the decomposition of the organic matter at the bottom of those water sources, where oxygen levels are very low. And it comes to the top through different processes, but both in reservoirs and wastewater, and also rice cultivation, that's the process for the methane being produced. And so they're all anthropogenic. None of those emissions would be taking place if we hadn't built that reservoir.
I see. So you would be approaching the hydropower facilities and then engaging with them to implement the technology.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exciting. And have you got kind of any of those customers on board yet, or is it very much because it's still at prototyping the technology, are you needing to get the technology to that big enough scale to be able to actually kind of sell it, I suppose?
So we have hydropower partners for the pilot.
Yeah.
So we have pilot customers, and I think we're waiting for one more. I think we're not quite ready to sell an end product yet. And we are big. Let me give you about scale. We, at a hydropower location, we're likely to be processing the equivalent of an Olympic-sized swimming pool of water every minute. Like, this is, our technology is the size of not far off half a football pitch.
Wow.
This is large infrastructure technology. So it's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of volumes of kind of methane capture and reduction, what have you got goals and targets around that? Once this is up and running to its kind of optimum potential, what does that look like?
So we have our kind of long-term headset on a billion tons of greenhouse gases in CO2 equivalents. There's a billion only in reservoirs each year, but we are also speaking to water utility companies. So we've been working really hard in hydropower. That's where our experience has been. And then knocking on the door, like, all year has been wastewater saying, but we've got this problem, and also it's sitting in your postcode. And so we are parallel pathing for as long as we possibly can, hydropower and wastewater. And I think because we're tiny, but we have a great team, we can be we're trying to be as nimble as we can by keeping both options open.
Yeah. Interesting. And so in terms of the next sort of 12 months then, and once the technology is all tested and ready to go, will it be another funding raise? Is that where you're looking to go next in order to then scale it out?
So for our fundraising, we are pushing quite hard on grants until we get to a point where we've de-risked the technology much more.
Right.
And then we will go to another private round. Yeah. I think that's more likely to be sometime in next year.
Perfect. Cool. Well, it sounds like all being well with all the tests and things over the next sort of few months, it sounds like it could be a fantastic solution to a really big and under what's discussed problem.
Yeah, I think the awareness challenge is the largest part. Also, even within the companies who could be our customers, and so not just being a technology provider, but being a part of the storyteller, of the educator. I think we feel it's our responsibility as well to be more the latter than the former. Awareness of the problem helps solve the problem.
Yeah. And how much ongoing support do you get as being a sort of alumnus of Carbon 13? How much do they remain in touch after you've kind of, I suppose, exited the venture builder and you're out in the wide world? Are there regular get-togethers? Do you have a kind of a line of communication with them at all times for any problems you've got?
Yeah, definitely the line of communication. So there are a few people who both within the cohort ourselves, we are each other's resource, and Carbon 13 themselves have been really very available, actually. We have learned the importance of advisors through our journey. So people who we can pick up the phone to and who are very experienced in our field to be a sounding board for our decision making, to challenge our thinking. And I just think the value of a good advisory board, and I don't mean like a board of directors, like we're tiny still. So it's not a legal body, but working out what is that expertise that you really need. And for us, like somebody who's infrastructure financing, that is critical. People who understand hydropower and the global network, that's critical. People who are in fundraising, who can say, look, do you know what, that's not a good term you're signing up to. So good advisors is my advice, and work hard at it consciously.
And you found your advisors through Carbon 13 or through other means? And if there was somebody out there that was at that early stage now and thought, yeah, I could really benefit from some great advisors, but how do I even start going out and finding them? What would you suggest?
I don't think there's any magic to it. I think it's an ongoing process. Okay, so it's a bit like a dating process. When you find the person, if you think, we need this kind of expertise, and if dreamily I'd have that person or one of these three, and then I'd say just reach out to them and very, very low commitment, can I ask you this tiny question about this small thing and see whether that goes well. and then maybe suggest a 30-minute conversation another month later. And over time, then you'll realize whether it is a relationship you want to build into an advisory role. I'd say that way. It's a long-term dating.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think, yeah, good advice, because I think perhaps if you go in with can you be my advisor, please? That suddenly feels like quite a big commitment for somebody to agree to. And can I just have 5 minutes of your time, is you're much more likely to get a warm reception.
Yeah, exactly. Can I speak to you when you're on the way back from a school run or on your commute, where you're no burden at all. Yeah. And then if they're passionate, then they'll want to help you because you'll be doing something awesome. Yeah. And they'll want to be associated with it. That's what it is.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a great advice. So I always round out by asking 3 quick fire questions.
Okay.
So what would be, I think you might have already answered this, so what would your top piece of advice be for someone who is thinking about setting up their own business?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, it is so hard,
isn't it?
I can't. It is really hard. So I look at people whose lives are simpler than mine, and I think, wow, you are able to financially support just you. You haven't got husband, 3 children, the dog, the school. Go for it. But it's very hard to do. Like it's not an easy thing to be balancing. And but if it doesn't work out, then you can always not do it. Just don't take on too much risk at a time. I know one I was thinking about is, how do you fund yourself before you're funded? Well, I think you have to say, how many months can I go without funding? And then I'll say, this is the line. So how long can I do this for? But if you've got a great idea, run it past people who aren't your friends and family. Everybody who you ask the questions, you will say it's a great idea, and it's probably not. Or it might be, but they're not the people to tell you. So I think never run your ideas past somebody who loves you.
Yeah, good advice. And second question, which either business or sustainability role model do you wish you could have just 1 hour with?
Oh, I think I was thinking about this. I think Ellen MacArthur.
Yeah.
It was during my postgrad at Cambridge that I became aware of her work and her influence. Then we did a dissertation around her thinking. I find it's incredible, her journey and her influence.
Yeah.
I'd be her.
And the braveness, the courage to do a lot of the things that she's done is just astounding.
Yeah. And the way she's disseminated information about her research, how open it all is, how transparent, how it's for everyone to learn from. Yeah, I think she's an inspiration.
Amazing. And what is one quick lifestyle change that you would recommend to listeners who are wanting to live more sustainably?
I think just eat a little bit less meat. I'm not, I'd say eat less meat, maybe a few less avocados.
Yeah. Absolutely. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Louise. That's been, fantastic. And I think that experience for anyone out there who didn't already know about Carbon 13, I think sharing that journey, hopefully there'll be some people out there who now know what it is. And if you are a frustrated founder or somebody who's got an idea and you want somebody to help you build it out, then the applications for the next cohort are currently open. They close on the 22nd of November. So go and get an application in. And the next cohort in Cambridge begins in March next year. And if anyone international is listening, they are also doing their first cohort in Berlin. So go and have a look on their website. But I think, thank you so much for sharing your experience of that. And also those bits around kind of the rigor and the process and how important that is to de-risking and kind of learning the fundamentals of running a business and how important that is. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
No problem. Take care. Have a really lovely day.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.